Beyond impeachment, what are the Russia and Ukraine investigations likely to uncover, especially in the U.S. intelligence community and FBI? Appearing on this week's episode of The Global Lane, former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell says she expects criminal indictments early next year.
Now, the emails of FBI lawyer Kevin Klein-Smith showed that he hated Donald Trump. He altered a FISA warrant, which allowed spying, and that's what Attorney General Barr calls it, spying on the Trump campaign. So was this just an error, Sidney, or a criminal act?
That's a criminal act. To affirmatively alter a document underlying a search warrant is tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice. There are any number of statutes that could apply to that conduct, which is why Mr. Klein-Smith has been referred for criminal investigation. And I cannot imagine that he would not be prosecuted for that. I mean, it's absolutely abhorrent. An FBI lawyer doing a 180-degree alteration of a document.
You said the people on the investigative teams were handpicked for a reason. So who handpicked them? What was the reason?
I'm sure they were handpicked by McComey and Strzok and McCabe. And they were picked because they knew them well enough to trust them with what their result-driven investigation intended to be. I can't help but note that on August 15 is when Page and Strzok texted each other, about the insurance policy they just discussed in McCabe's office. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the next day they opened the investigation on General Flynn, and the day after that is when they sent the agent into the presidential daily briefing to take notes on Flynn. So Flynn, either the assault and prosecution of Flynn was either the insurance policy or a substantial part of it.
Who else do you think is under the microscope now by John Durham? Comey, Clapper, Brennan, McCabe, and how likely are we to see indictments there?
I think all of those are under Mr. Durham's microscope, and I think indictments are a strong possibility.
Soon or later?
I would say within the next 4 months or so.
Well, after visiting Ukraine recently, Rudy Giuliani tweeted that, quote, a large-scale joint investigation into Ukraine and the U.S. would uncover and recover billions of stolen goods by crooks from both countries at the highest level. So he later said that impeachment is, quote, a smokescreen for the Obama-Biden administration's corruption. It will soon be proven, he said. Do you agree? What do you think?
I don't know what evidence he has or is looking at other than the little bit that's been made public. But obviously there was some sort of pay-to-play going on with Biden's son. And Mr. Biden himself admitted on national television, or at least it's certainly been broadcast that way since then, about having deliberately withheld and threatened to withhold funds from Ukraine to achieve the end of the investigation of Burisma. And apparently there were 17 or so investigations going on related to Burisma that were halted as a result of Mr. Biden's actions. So it sounds like there was a whole lot going on with that company that needs to be fully investigated.
Finally, I've got to ask you this, too. I mean, Lieutenant General Flynn was highly decorated for his years of service to the country. I know he was appointed Defense Intelligence Director by President Obama. And then he goes to work for Trump. He's attacked by members of the deep state almost as if he were a traitor to his country. And now he's been bankrupted, his reputation ruined. Now I'm sure he learned a lot about our intelligence community in that role as DIA director. And he was quite outspoken, I know, against radical Islam. So why was he targeted, Sidney?
He had made very clear that he was going to audit the entire intelligence agency as national security advisor to the president. He knew where all the bodies were buried. He knew all the things they've been doing wrong. And he was going to hold them all accountable for it. I mean, there are billions of dollars in operations being run off the books and conduct like we see here, the horrible abuse of the National Security Administration that's been documented by FISA court Judge Rosemary Collyer and Judge Boasberg. The whole intelligence community has been off the rails for years and no one's held them accountable. He was going to do that. And he'd also been extremely outspoken, and the Afghanistan papers just published by the Washington Post show this, that he was sounding the alarm about the war in Afghanistan and had been very vocal about what a failure that was, too.
And you can hear more from Sidney Powell and also Kim Jong-un's pledge to send an unwelcome Christmas gift to Donald Trump. That's all on the Global Lane tonight, 9:30 Eastern, only on the CBN.